In this video I'm going to introduce you to the brushes found within ZBrush, and I'm also going to show you how they're made up in the next video chapter. For this one I'm going to show you some core basic ones that I often use, and they're ones that you're going to be probably using quite a lot too in whatever sculpting application you're going to be using. So the first thing to mention is that you don't have to go through any special process in order to start sculpting on anything, other than if you start from a primitive, in which you would select that primitive and then you would draw it on the screen, go to edit mode, and then do your manipulation with the initialize here. After that you simply make it a poly mesh, and then you can start working on it as a 3D model. It's that simple. Of course it's even more simpler if you are using a mesh which comes within ZBrush. So we'll go to the light box, we're going to go to tool, we'll just select this human being there, this Nick's human, and that's it. We can start sculpting on it straight away. You don't have to convert it to voxels or convert it into any special format. You're literally going to be sculpting on the raw geometry that it starts from, a polygon object. This means that you can subdivide it, add it to layers, and you're always working with the actual geometry at all times, up into the multi-millions of polygons. So as an example, if I turn on the poly frame here, you can see it's a polygon object. If I press the Ctrl and D key, I've now subdivided it once. If I was to turn off the poly frame and back on again, you can see it's updated it and it's showing the extra polygons that it's generated. And the more subdividing I do, the more denser this mesh is going to get. And of course you can go down your subdivisional levels back to your base mesh again. This means that you're able to work directly on the mesh you've imported. It means that anything that you do, say for instance I'm using the move tool, I'm going to show you these brushes in a minute, you can work on the actual raw geometry, i.e. the cage mesh. Anything that you do in the lower levels automatically get transferred to the higher levels. Anything you do in the higher levels also automatically gets transferred into the lower levels, as you can see there. So in the way that ZBrush works between its subdivisional history, it's very simple. It's always working on the raw geometry, which is the polygon model that you've imported or used from within ZBrush. It can't get no more simpler than that. If you don't want to subdivide your model at all, you don't even have to do that either. You've got a subdivisional smooth service, which is much like in any other 3D application, whereby it smooths your mesh but it's not permanently subdividing it or applying it. So to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete any history from the subdivisional levels. That's delete anything higher, and then what we're going to do is we're just simply going to press the D key, and that's actually smoothed our mesh, but it's not subdivided it at all. And if we just open up this tab here, found in the geometry tab, there's a sub tab called Dynamic Sub D, and this is what we've just enabled with the D key. You can see there. It allows you to apply as many levels of smoothness as you want, but any manipulation that you do on this model is always on the primary base mesh. So as an example here, I'm going to leave it on subdivided 1. And I'm going to use my move tool. I'm going to manipulate this, and I'm manipulating the smoothed model, but actually I'm just working on the base mesh. And by pressing the D key, going between here, you can see here that I'm just been manipulating the base mesh, although it's been appeared to be smooth. So it's the Shift and D to take it off, D key to put the smoothing back on. But remember that this mesh is not subdivided, it's just been smoothed. This is very handy for if you want to do some manipulation just to the cage mesh and don't want to have to subdivide it. This is really good to be using in the modeling approach, in which you actually don't want to do no high frequency sculpting. You just want to manipulate the cage mesh, and you can just go and see what it looks like when it's smoothed at any time you want. Now let's get onto some brushes. By default in ZBrush you won't see these brushes that I've got down here on the bottom of the palette. These are ones that I've customly put there for my own usage, because these are the ones I use all the time. In addition to this, I've actually put these sliders down here, which have also been taken from the menus for features that I often use. The brushes primarily are found in the top left menu or the palette. You click on this once and you can see all of the brushes that are available, all the ones that are directly available, that is. If you go into the lightbox, you'll be able to find even more brushes, and these are folders with other brushes inside those folders. So you can see here we've got different types of smoothing brushes in here, whereas in here we've got only a few selections of smooth brushes. They're all alphabetically numbered, or shall I say lettered, so that we can find them quicker. So press S for smooth, and you can see here that we've got smooth brush and smooth peaks, smooth valleys. I'll go back into there again. And primarily the smooth brush is actually tied to the shift key, much like you find within other sculpting applications such as 3DCoat. So it's automatically tied to the shift key. By changing any of these, you're choosing what type of smooth that you actually want to happen when you press that shift key. In addition though, you can actually assign that shift key to be using any of the brushes, but by default it's the smooth brush which is commonly used. All of these other brushes that you're seeing here are all the ones that I've actually docked out of here and put down here, and these are the ones that I'm going to be showing you more about. So the move brush moves the geometry as you would expect it to. It moves it in volume according to how big your brush size is. It's very, very fluid, it's very smooth, there's absolutely no delay. Even when you're working with multi-million polygon meshes, it's still very smooth. The Move Topological examines the topological area in which you're working on, and it will move just that area. This is handy if you're moving areas such as lips or eyes where they're commonly close to other polygons, but you don't want to move them. So with the topological move, you can see here that I'm able to move the upper eyes without affecting too much of the lower. Whereas the normal move tool, it has much more effect on the lower lids of the surrounding area. The move and the move topological brushes are used continuously. When you're in a sculpting scenario, you would have multiple layers that you're sculpting on, such as now. Typically you would go to the lower levels and do all of your main bulk moving to get your base mesh and the silhouette set up. You would normally have the symmetry turned on, although you've also got the ability within ZBrush to work on asymmetrical objects that originally started off symmetry, and you can still apply symmetrical sculpting. The next one I'm going to bring you to is not this Z modeler, because this is more like traditional modeling. I'm going to skip this one. Is the Dam Standard brush. Now the Dam Standard brush is great for creating creases It's very smooth and fluid. It's really nice to use when you're sculpting things like cloth. You can quickly get in there. You can hold the Alt key and it will start to build volume on top. And then you can just let go of the Alt key and it starts to push in. You'll feel when you're using these brushes that you've got a very kind of direct contact between the feel of the brush and what you're seeing happen on the screen. You've got the standard brush, which tends to pull it towards its normal. And I'm using the Shift key just to smooth off this as I'm going. The Inflate brush works very differently from the standard brush in that it's good for areas like fingers and toes. It will inflate just the area that you're going, but it will do it from all sides, both the front and the back simultaneously. Whereas a standard brush will tend to pull it towards its normal, pulling from the opposite side of the mesh. The clay tubes is what you imagine it to be. It will build up layers like clay. This is particularly nice to build volume and muscle. Again, this is something that you'll need to try for yourself. I can only tell you what I'm experiencing when I'm using these brushes, and what I'm feeling with the clay brushes, I'm feeling a very direct, a very fluid, smooth movement that allows me to feel like I'm in total control of what I'm sculpting. The clay build-up is similar to the clay tubes, but it's good for building up more volume, whereas the clay tubes kind of builds up more layers. You can see their volume here, you've got the front deltoid. But this isn't a sculpting session as such, it's just showing you the basic tools. And of course you've got the pinch brush, which is quite a common one that you'll see on most sculpting applications. You can just pinch whatever you're using there or going across. By default there's some modifiers to these brushes, and I'll just show you the modifier for the pinch brush. And what this does is it enables it to become a pinch brush simultaneously as a sculpt brush as well at the same time. So if I go to the brush and I go down to the bottom here, you've got the modifier. I'm going to turn this up full. You'll notice now that when I use the pinch brush, it's actually sculpting volume at the same time. Again, this is nice for making cloth, and you can press the Alt key to give you the alternative to that, where it's pushing it in. You can imagine you've got your trousers here, and you've got some creases coming off your trousers. And these creases will tend to get more closer together as they're getting down. But you'll notice that it's pinching at the same time as it's actually creating volume. Press the Alt key, I can just reinforce some of these folds. Of course there's dedicated brushes as well to doing these kind of things. Just wanted to show you what the modifier brush typically does. Now, as far as changing the size of your brush, changing the fall off and the intensity, it can all be done either from up here. We've got the intensity. This here controls how much strength that a brush will have. We by default has got it on Z add, which basically means it's always going to add and pull out the geometry, so you can just add into it. Z sub will push in, but leaving it on Z add and using the Alt key allows you to just quickly switch between adding and taking away from the mesh that you're sculpting on. The draw size is obviously up here, and the fall off between where the initial brush stroke starts and its fade out value is done by the vocal shift, as you can see here. Of course, you can access this much more quicker by right clicking anywhere in the interface, and you can access these draw, vocal shift and intensity. Let's just smooth that out a little bit. In the next video, I'm going to show you more about how these brushes are built, and so it gives you a kind of idea of how you can customize a brush and make your own brush. And there's many options that you can use, but so far you can see that I've not really gone into many details. I've not got into many menus to do what I need to do. It's quite simple, even though the UI can appear to some quite cluttered or a little bit unorthodox to other applications.